The Walt Disney Company has responded to investor Nelson Peltz describing the company as woke and specifically taking issue with recent releases in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He also takes issue with the company engaging in just political actions at large. Before we get into this, I'd like to ask you please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. I wrote this up over at thatparkplace.com. And before we get to Disney's response, let's go over what Nelson Peltz actually had to say. If you're unfamiliar with who Nelson Peltz is, he is the founding partner of Trian Fund Management, who is currently engaged in a proxy battle with the Walt Disney Company to obtain 2 seats on the company's board, one for himself and one for former Disney Chief Financial Officer Jay Rossello. So in a recent interview with Financial Times, he told the outlet's Harriet Agnew, people go to watch a movie or a show to be entertained. They don't go to get a message. He then specifically took aim at Marvel Studios' current business model of representation that has resulted in some major box office disasters, such as the Marvels. He said, why do I have to have a Marvel that's all women? Not that I have anything against women, but why do I have to do that? He also questioned, why can't I have Marvels that are both? Why do I need an all-black cast? Pelt's criticisms are not unheard of. Even Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige has indicated that the studio lost its way with identity politics and the pushing of woke ideologies. This is what he informed the Movie Business podcast. I think this was a couple years ago. He said this. When he was asked what Marvel's secret to success was. He said, and I guess the distilled down of what lessons are learned is to entertain the audience at every turn. Frank Capra has a quote that our co-president, Louis D'Esposito, quotes often, which is basically to distill down to entertain first. You can have as many beautiful messages, aka woke ideology, and beautiful life theories, woke ideology, and beautiful thematics, woke ideology, that you want to put into the world that all of us do and all our filmmakers do. All of our filmmakers do. So he's admitting that all of their filmmakers embrace woke ideology, right? But if you're not entertaining first, it will fall on deaf ears. So he's literally trying to use Marvel Studios films as a vehicle to push woke ideology. He's realizing that it was not happening because they have failed to entertain first, and they were just simply using it as a propaganda tool, and they were no longer entertaining. So it wasn't as effective as what it once was. And he says, I think that's always been the way. Thankfully, you're making the kind of movies that you love to see that also goes into entertaining yourself, which is what we also try to do here at Marvel Studios. Obviously, they have failed to entertain people at large to the scale that they had been. One only needs to look at their recent releases, both at the box office and on their streaming service, Disney Plus, which we will do here in a little bit. But before we get to that, let's look at what Peltz had to say about just the company engaging in political activities at large. And he used Ben & Jerry's as an example. Ben & Jerry's is owned by Unilever, but he says this, you've got to get these politics out of the boardroom. Ben & Jerry's job is to sell ice cream, not to make political statements. And these people use anything for a soapbox that they have no right to do. I have my own feelings about a ceasefire. Israel has got to get a few things squared away before they get a ceasefire, because what happened to them was despicable. So he obviously does not think it is Ben & Jerry's place to be issuing political statements about geopolitical wars between countries, which, yes, their job is to sell ice cream. It's not to make geopolitical statements. He also shared that he advised Unilever, the British conglomerate that owns Ben & Jerry's, Dove, Hellmann's, and Axe, among others, to continue to do business in Russia despite the war in Ukraine. He said this, I told Unilever not to pull out, and so far they've listened. If we pull out of Russia, they will take our brands for themselves. I don't think that's a good trade. He also noted that P&G and Colgate-Palmolive have not pulled out. He said, why the hell should we? We're competing on the world stage with these products. So he doesn't think that they need to be engaging in geopolitical activism. And the Walt Disney Company has been very active in its activism. We saw Bob Iger talk about boycotting the state of Georgia after the state decided it was going to try and save as many children as possible with their heartbeat law. And then obviously the biggest example of Disney's activism was when they decided to engage with the state of Florida under the leadership of Bob Chapek. But Bob Iger was the one leading that charge through a post on X. Obviously completely backfired. and has seen a massive decline in Disney's brand positivity ratings. So let's get to what the Disney spokesman had to say. Disney's response to all of these comments from Nelson Peltz. This was reported by Don Chmielewski, probably butchered that, who writes at Reuters. This Disney spokesman said this. This is exactly why Nelson Peltz shouldn't be anywhere near a creatively driven company. So Disney is confirming that they are going to be doubling down on their all-female Marvel's projects, despite having a massive disaster at the box office. That film grossed only 200 million at the box office, less than 200 million, excuse me. It's been reported that it has at least a minimum production budget of 267 million. And that doesn't even include reshoots that were done in 2023. Because if you recall, the film was moved to the fall. It was supposed to release in the winter. They switched it with Haunted Mansion because they were doing reshoots and changing things up because it was an utter disaster. So the budget ballooned. But even if you do look at just the $267 million production budget, it had to make $667.5 million to break even. It clearly did not do that. It made less than 200 million. It's highly likely the film lost hundreds of millions of dollars. But Disney's going to be doubling down on this. At least that's what they're indicating, because that's what Peltz is criticizing, making absolute flops, disasters like the Marvels. Now, obviously, there are characters that are male in the Marvels, but anyone who knows or anyone who has any kind of common sense realizes what he's talking about there. They're clearly pushing feminist agenda through the Marvels. You look at the television shows too, right? Their most recent TV series was Echo, performed absolutely terribly. All 5 episodes of the series were released back on January 9th on both Disney Plus and Hulu. That's key. Disney Plus and Hulu. According to Nielsen, the series only garnered 731 million minutes in its debut week. So only 731 million minutes watched debut week for all 5 episodes. By its second week, it was no longer even listed on Nielsen's top 10 charts, performing worse than Netflix's The Crown, which brought in 374 million minutes. So we know at least that the viewing time was halved in its second week, at least halved. And just to show you how much of a disaster that show was, again, all 5 episodes, 731 million minutes on both Disney Plus and Hulu. They released Loki season 1 back in June 2021. It was only 1 episode. By itself, it racked up 731 million minutes, and that was only on Disney Plus. That's how poorly Echo performed. You compare it to Loki right there. It's not looking good. Identity politics has not been good business for the Walt Disney Company and Marvel Studios. It's well documented. Well documented. You can look at the decline from Black Panther to Black Panther Wakanda Forever. You can look at Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. They race swapped Kang the Conqueror. Film lost money. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 also engaged in this identity politics. They race swapped the High Evolutionary. Performed worse than both the first Guardians of the Galaxy and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Barely made profit, but performed worse than the first 2 films in the franchise. Huge declines. But Disney, according to the spokesman, is saying that if you actually want to course correct and get away from this identity politics that is clearly a giant loser at the box office, you shouldn't be anywhere near it. Nelson Peltz shouldn't be anywhere near it if you want to course correct. If you want to actually try and start making money again at the box office, we don't want you. That is what Disney is saying. These people are ridiculous. It's not about profits. It's not about revenues. It's not about entertaining. It's about the message. It's about propaganda. And they're going to continue to use the company as their personal political tool to spread their evil propaganda in all its forms. All its forms. And there's many of it. I mean, obviously, talk a lot about here about transgender ideology. feminism, identity politics. All of that is encompassed within the evil ideology that is wokeness. But Disney wants it to stay. They want to continue to push that ideology. And that's why they don't want Nelson Peltz to get a board seat, because he's going to likely try and course correct on that. He doesn't want to see that stuff anymore. He thinks it's losing money, and it objectively is. You can see it. We just talked about the Marvels. We talked about Echo. But let me know what you guys make of what the Walt Disney Company had to say in response to Nelson Peltz describing the company as woke. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, but to always speak the truth.